in those meetings.
So, I figured out.
Morning. I'd like to call to order the Kane County Finance and Budget Committee. Monday, 9 a.m.
Juby. Right here. Lewis. Right here. Sanchez.
Sanchez present.
Sturgis. Pepe.
Deputy here.
Leonard.
Leonard here.
Berman.
Firm's here.
Firm.
Thank you. We have a remote attendance request by Mr. Sanchez. Everybody approve?
Mhm.
Very good. Mr. Sturgis hopefully will join us later. So we'll go on. We have approval of minutes, which I have none. Or comments on agenda items. And the first one I have is Lisa Ost.
Good morning. My name is Lisa Ost. I live in St. Charles, and I'm the Executive Director of Court Services, which is comprised of probation, pretrial, juvenile detention, and psychological diagnostic services. We currently have about 185 employees, and everything we do is required by a statute, except for the Diagnostic Center, which was implemented actually to save the county money. The KCDC costs $1.1 million to run, but the service that they provide saved the county from having to pay $2.5 million if the evaluations had to be purchased on the open market. These are complex psychological evaluations of things like offenders' fitness to stand trial, likelihood of domestic violence, lethality, or sex offenders' patterns and habits. The court is not likely to stop ordering these evaluations. I have presented many times that the pretrial, probation, and detention staff are largely funded by the state of Illinois, saving Kane County a lot of money because the county only needs to provide a benefits package to those employees. The result is the huge cost savings to the county, but that is forfeited when the county reduces state subsidized headcount, as happened when the electronic monitoring program was eliminated in the 2018 budget cuts. I do see that that was partly taken into account on Exhibit A. Nonetheless, the proposed cuts are going to hurt. In 2017, the county board paid for a mandated services study to ensure that the county was as lean as possible. If you haven't read it, I highly encourage you to do so. The study found that the county wanted to make sure that the departments were lean and that we were only doing our minimally required statutory mandates. The study went department by department and gave recommendations on each one how to both increase revenue and decrease costs. There were many recommendations in that report that still haven't been implemented to this day and could have been saving the county money. The report said, for my department, court services in particular, that there's a couple of factors that need to be taken into account when considering cuts. One, judges are under no requirement to stop ordering people to probation or pretrial services just because the county has reduced funding for them. Two, these programs are subsidized by the state and provide the county's only alternative to incarceration. So their operations actually saves the county money. That means that by cutting these programs, you are likely going to see greater costs. Court Services has always been a good steward of the money you've entrusted with us. We've returned surplus money to the general fund every year. A certain amount of elasticity in the budget has allowed us to quickly shift resources to adjust for crime and offending patterns. And I'm proud of the work that we do. In 2021, the Access to Justice Lab at Harvard Law School evaluated our pretrial risk assessment. And they found that when offenders are ordered to pretrial services, court services, their noncompliance for both new offending and failure to come to court, the rates dropped significantly and hovers around 15% to this day. We call the offenders, we text them, we FaceTime them. We do everything to make sure that they go to court and get their conditions done. Texting is a lot cheaper than issuing warrants for arrest and then having to house, clothe, feed, and provide for all of their medical and dental needs while they sit in jail waiting their next court date. Probation officers work just as hard. In 2022, we had over 3,200 offenders in the community on probation and conditional discharge that we were actively supervising. And that year, there were only 322 new offenses committed by that population. That's less than a 10% recidivism rate. That's incredible. And anyone who's read the research knows just how low that is. We're constantly seeking out the latest research to learn about techniques we can do, things like CBT, where we can literally retrain offenders on how to think, to really get at their thinking errors and help reduce the reoffending rates. That's not easy work. It requires intensive skill training and it takes hours to do. I don't know yet how we're going to meet the cuts that have been proposed this morning. We must remain functionally staffed for the needs of the court, and I cannot cut until I coordinate with the other departments and the chief judge to make sure that I'm able to meet all of my statutory obligations. I know this isn't easy for you. It's not easy for us, but we need to try to find a way to work together to minimize the harm. Thank you.
Rachel Connett.
Good morning. I'm Rochelle Conant. I'm the public defender. You will hear a lot today about mandated services and what we as judicial system partners and players are required to provide. What you will hear from no one but me is that the public defender is the only position that is mandated by the United States Constitution. Each one of us is constitutionally guaranteed the right to counsel. That is the service of the attorneys in my office provide each day. When the state of Illinois mandates such as the Safety Act and the Pretrial Fairness Act, it is the attorneys of the Public Defender's Office who ensure that for every client, the court gives us that the rights afforded by those mandates are carried out, that they have the right to counsel. But it is more than just the right to counsel. What we strive to give is more than effective assistance of counsel. The attorneys in my office give their all to each and every client, and that requires hours and hours of work. State mandates, such as the Pretrial Fairness Act, have not decreased our caseloads, but instead have increased our workloads. The requirements of the Act have imposed duties similar to appellate attorneys, duties that we previously did not have. The required duties of the Act have increased hearings in the courtrooms on a daily basis. The attorneys have to prepare for these hearings, and this is beyond what they are already doing to cover the court calls. This is not just increased work for our office, but for the entire judicial system. I have strived to be fiscally responsible with the budget that I receive each year. I have worked hard to make sure that the attorneys in my office are compensated for the work that they do. They should be paid the same as their counterparts in the state's attorney's office, and this board has graciously acknowledged that. Our salaries are now equitable to the state's attorney's office and comparable to other counties. That has made a difference. As of the beginning of September, we will be fully staffed. This time last year, we had 7 vacant attorney positions. That was an ongoing issue for over 2 years. During that time, we did not take fewer cases. We did not turn away appointments. We worked hard to provide the same level of excellent representation as we always do. But we did it because myself and my 2 other supervisors worked countless hours, nights, and weekends to ensure that we provided the representation that is mandated by the Constitution. We did not make it through because we could function with 7 less attorneys. We made it through because we were determined to provide for our clients. The hours put in is not something that was sustainable. And so we are extremely grateful that the comparable salaries have enabled us to fully staff our office. We are not flush with attorneys. When workloads increase, we do not have extra attorneys to take over the additional work. The cuts that are being proposed for my office are roughly about $12,000 more than what was given so that I could get my attorneys to comparable salaries. There are 53 employees in my office, 41 of which are what are commonly referred to as line attorneys. These are the attorneys that provide the service that the Constitution requires, that the Constitution mandates. These are the people in the courtrooms carrying out the mandates set down by the state of Illinois. When the Pretrial Fairness Act says an individual has to be represented by an attorney from day one, these are the people who step up. I don't have finance people, media people, or IT people in my office. I have 41 attorneys who perform the duties mandated by the Constitution and the state of Illinois. 41 attorneys who are the majority of my budget. The attorneys in my office are the true believers. They are the defenders of the Constitution. They are dedicated to their job. And I know all of you are dedicated to what you are doing as well. They deserve to know that they are following the mandates that have been set out for us and that their job in this county is secure in doing so. Thank you.
Good timing too.
Jamie Mosner.
Good morning. I'm Jamie Mosser, your Kane County State's Attorney. I recently learned at the last Finance Committee meeting that one of the budget proposals that was being considered included significant cuts to office holders within judicial and public safety. Included in that was the notion that the state's attorney's office, my office, should be cut by $3 million. That would equate to laying off over 20 assistant state's attorneys. As you should all know, 85% of my budget is made up of personnel. My office, along with my judicial partners here with me, is statutory. It is not optional whether or not we're here to prosecute cases, and we are an essential part of public safety. Over the last 3 years, I have come in under budget each year and spent the money given in my office in a fiscally responsible manner. While we have had to add much needed staff to the office along with pay parity raises, we significantly increased public safety while stopping the constant exodus of valuable employees to higher paying jobs in the surrounding county state's attorney's offices. I've even gone so far as to constantly apply for grants or other special revenue funds so that my office was not solely reliant on all of you and the general fund. This is not something that I have to do, as my office must be fully funded by the county under state law. I rather chose to do it in order to be a good steward of the people's money and to keep this office running properly. When I first took office in 2020, we researched and presented to the county board several revenue options. We did this because I knew that the offices associated with judicial and public safety were woefully underfunded. We even researched what other counties were able to do to adequately fund JPS, which included, among other things, the retailer's occupation tax. Despite our suggestions and understanding that we needed to raise revenue, nothing was done. With this lack of action going on for years now, I have made substantial efforts to find supplemental sources of funding. As one example, I went to Springfield recently to ask for money from our legislator to expand our efforts in prosecuting domestic violence, knowing that we would inevitably be in some sort of deficit, with there being no change in the revenue at the county level. I am proud to say that I was granted $1 million from Senator Linda Holmes as a result, and I intend to use that money accordingly. Despite the fact that my office is by statute a necessary part of this county, I'm being told that we must cut either $3 million or at this point, $1 million based on the new budget numbers from Friday afternoon. In either event, these amounts for my office and other JPS offices are completely arbitrary and not based on anything that takes into account public safety. They do not even account for the needs we laid out in our budget proposals, which we affirmed were necessary to run our offices. In other words, there appears to be little to no effort to look at revenue increases or cuts in areas that are not required by law. I'm here to let you know that I am unable to cut 20 ASA salaries from my budget, as they are necessary to prosecute the cases in this growing county. Please know that this is not an unwillingness to be a good fiscal partner with this county. It is because we are still understaffed and underpaid for the work that we must do. I believe you will hear the same from my JPS partners, and I assure you, we are not wrong on this fact. I'm also letting you know that if you attempt to deplete our budgets in this reckless and unreasonable way, we will have no choice but to sue the county board to reasonably fund public safety. That will necessitate me appointing a series of special assistant state's attorneys to represent the different office holders and the county board, which will mean untold spending by this county to ultimately fund public safety in the way that we, the elected and appointed office holders, say the job should be done. I implore this county board to take a different approach to balance this budget, one that does not cause unnecessary litigation or threaten the safety of every person here in Kane County. Thank you.
All those lawyers to be.
Ron Hain.
Hope you all can pity me. Those are really three tough acts to follow, but here I am. Also, the fact that over the last 6 years, we have had a wonderful working relationship with our board, and you've all been very supportive of us. So I don't want to come across as antagonistic. I do want to speak from a little bit of emotion that some of my partners have brought up. And I also just want to point out some facts, and I also want to come to a couple of different solutions that I'd like to propose. And I don't think you're a rookie to hearing those solutions that we talked about before. Most importantly, this right here is something I reflect upon all the time. These are letters from people who have left our reentry jail services over the last 5 years, writing specifically to me, thanking me and my staff for everything we've done to turn their lives around and stop them from recidivizing and committing more crime. This to me is the most important thing in my almost 30 years of wearing a badge and a uniform than anything else. And I hope you guys feel the same way when it comes to your constituents. Cuts to public safety in this day and age is not a timely fashion. We are already working bare bones at the sheriff's office. We have sometimes 6 deputies on patrol, which most normal agencies would have double that in a county our size, like McHenry County does double that. But I have command staff, myself will go out, take calls, do investigations. This is what we're remedied to. And we do it for the love of the job. We do it for the love of the service. But again, these are the people that we serve. These are the people that you serve. We have another elected official in the room that does a great job of bringing people in here to talk about their concerns, in our treasurer, Mr. Lawson. And I hope that you guys would engage folks to come in here and do the same, to let people hear your concerns from your own constituency, from your own county board districts. Most importantly, besides the constituents that we serve, you understand, like the 3 incredible workers that came up here before me have said, we have mandates, legal mandates to do a specific job. And if my budget is cut by $4 to $5 million, we can't do those jobs. That's a simple state of affairs. You guys know over the last 6 years that I have been very fiscally responsible. I've given money back to the county. I've given $1 million back to balance the budget even before the fiscal year began. I've shared money with other offices and departments within the county. Like, we're all about giving. We're all about sharing. So I don't want public safety. I don't want our citizens to be punished by a lack of planning. So to me, I'll stop the emotion, I'll bring it back down, and I'll bring it to solutions. Public safety sales tax. When you look at other counties that have the public safety sales tax, the vast majority, we're talking 70, 80% in some situations, give it to public safety. This county does the complete opposite. And I'm all about KDOT. I love our Department of Transportation. I love their leadership. I love all their employees, but we need to balance this out. that's solution number one. Give us more of that percentage. And I know there's talk about the dollar for dollar return, the ROI on investment when it comes to the KDOT work. But I'm sorry, when we talk about $6-7 million in difference given back to public safety, we're not in a business to make money. We're in a business to provide services. And to me, I don't care about making more money for our county to pave roads. I care about protecting people. That is my job, my sole job. So I advocate strongly, and I know many of my public safety partners do as well, to take a look at the public safety sales tax and sharing that more fruitfully with the public safety partners as it was designed to do. Or just figure a new tax. I mean, we got a couple months left, and I hope that we hear that the solution may be over the next 6 months that you vote in this new budget, and 6 months down the road, when we're all way over budget because of these cuts, that you're willing to allot us more money once you vote something else in place. But I am not willing, much like our state's attorney, to make any sort of cuts to a system that is nationally recognized for its great work. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. I have Jamie Mosser again. How did we get it double dipping or what? Mr. Lawson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. And I have 5 minutes.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Chris Lawson, Aurora, Illinois, County Treasurer. We collect $2 billion in property taxes for 250, 300 taxing agencies and generate $18 million in interest income on our cash balances. You know, this year I took a very simple approach to our budget in the general fund. First of all, limited the general fund salary increases over adjusted salaries from 2024 to 2.5% or less. We limited the general fund commodities and contractual to less than 3% as requested. And you say, well, how are you going to squeeze everything in? The answer is we use our statutory authority under the tax automation fund as like a safety valve, the give and take each year, depending on circumstances. And then finally, the final step was fees less expenses. We generated more than $1 million in this budget of positive numbers. And between that and the interest income, we pay for ourselves 20 times over each year. Now, there's a response, unfortunately, to this. The reciprocation was that in the first round of cuts, and by the way, could you put up the slides? The first was a 20% cut in, let's see, maybe August 5th, and then most recently on Friday, a cut of 10%. So I know this doesn't come from the school of no good deed shall be left unpunished, or the beatings will continue until morale improves. But as everybody is emphasizing, this is really tough. The first slide, please. So making inaccurate and misleading statements, King County Board budget work, a lot like obscenity, hard to pin down and define, but you know it when you hear it and see it. I'm going to provide just 4 examples. The responsibility for self-proclaimed clarity and transparency, which I know our board prides itself on, belongs to the board chairman, Parag, vice chairman, Tepe, and the accounting department that reports to them. Next slide, please. The first example is inaccurate payroll information. It's a moving target in my general fund budget. I think August 5th might have been last Monday. It was Kathy Hopkinson report to me about my general fund salaries and wages were $671,500 as it shows there. And on August 9th, just Friday afternoon, that number went up to 942, which I think qualified me for some cuts. The difference in just those two numbers in just 4 days was 40% overstated. By the way, the first number is the accurate number. The next slide, the next example, example number 2, there is a huge difference between a positive number and a negative number. A positive number contributes to the solution that we're all trying to come to. Negative number, use of funds. As you see there, the fees, not interest income, is about 1.8 million generated. That's not interest income. That is fees from services, penalties, actually. Then expenses is the 826. Net production of solution of $1 million. Last year, the contribution was about 731. That's a 27% more. And the response was cut first 20%, now 10%. Next slide, please. The third example, unfortunately, a little bit harder to see, but there is a gross understatement in this budget of county revenues coming from the state government, which then inflates the deficit by 5 million. Bottom line on this slide is that understatement of state provided county or revenue to King County is $5 million, whether you cut it on the August or the July 19th or August 9th numbers that have been provided. Next slide. The huge omissions in your process is, and I am, I'm out of time, but there are omissions. Next slide, please. Final example, please stop scaring people. The folks that you're, talking about the cuts, we're scaring folks. Take care.
Thank you. Ellen Notke.
I'm Ellen Notke, Batavia. You want to adopt recommendations for county offices and departments for proposed reduction in preparation for FY 2025 budget. Last time the county tried to tell the elected officials how to spend their budgeted allocations, the elected officials brought forth a lawsuit that cost the taxpayers $2 million. How much would that last lawsuit cost today in 2025? You want to amend the county financial policies regarding RTA sales tax allocation. The Finance Department Executive Director served as KDOT Finance Director for 13 years. How do you justify taking RTA funds that are used to leverage state and federal grants? The ramifications from this move would be detrimental for years to come. Resolution authorizing the submission to the electors of Kane County by referendum to oppose a 1% special county retailers occupation tax. Costs everywhere are out of control. You will be forcing the taxpayers to shop in other counties. Ask retailers of the big box stores in Batavia how the city's imposed 10 cents a bag is working out for them. Why would you even consider using general funds and reserves to solve a problem that has been in the making for the last 13 years? What would we do if there was a major catastrophe, a plumbing break, or major mold problems, and those funds were no longer available because they were used instead to plug the budget hole created by reckless spending over the years? All this is a consequence of a fake holding the line on increasing the levy. If we had just taken 5% each year for the last 13 years, the increase in your tax bill for county services would be minuscule compared to what you are now proposing to do. In closing, ask yourself this: in order to balance a budget, why are you willing to sell out our future? Thank you.
Thank you. Teresa Barrio.
Is it favorite CPI?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Teresa Barrero, your King County Circuit Clerk, and I live in Aurora. I don't want to rehash what the previous speakers have already emphasized. Everything that they have talked about many times starts with a case number, and from there is a trickle-down process through our office. I have passed out a PowerPoint. Some of you might not have gotten it this morning, but I will email it to you with the real numbers on it for you. Please take a look at it. My office is also statutory. We follow 284 statutes. That doesn't include what went through Springfield this year. We have heard that the county board would like to see additional cuts from the circuit clerk's budget. I am very confused since my budget presentation showed that I was 6% down from last year. This includes the current vacancies and staff number allowed for 2024. We included all those salaries in our budget. We finally have the deputy clerk vacancies filled and are working on filling all of our exempt vacancies. I have been a consistent steward of the taxpayers of King County for the past 4 years. I have not gone over budget, nor have I asked for additional funds other than last year when I was left out of the equity study because I pulled out of the equity study because it would not be fair to the rest of our employees. My office has seen this happen to them before under Deb Seiler. If you recall, there was a lawsuit over this. Staff was cut, phones didn't get answered, court was delayed, and all statutory operations were stalled, and it has taken years to catch up. We were a laughing stock to the county and to Springfield. Since 2020, we have redeemed the office and our pillar example to the state. This has not been without continued vacancies, illnesses, and living within the means that the county board has given us. If you cut our budget, I will have to let clerks go. The daily duties will go back to Deb Seiler days. The work will be stalled. Courts will be delayed. People will sit longer in jail. Our statutory obligations to the state will be delayed. Restitution payments will be delayed, which includes child support payments. Collections and past due fines will also be delayed. I will not let all of our hard work at the CIC office return to these days. It is impossible to operate any leaner than we already currently are. Thank you.
Thank you. It's the extent of our public comments, to the best of my knowledge. You know, you may all be wondering what I've done with my nose, but I had a little cancer treatment. They scraped it off and took some skin from over here and put on it. So hopefully it'll improve my looks for the next 10 years. Thank you.
Before it gets better.
Yeah, life is that way. New business, Ms. Juby.
Chair. Thank you. So at the last special finance meeting on July 30th, Vern Tepe and I were asked to meet with Kathy Hopkinson to propose an equitable starting point to guide discussion to determine a template for departments and electeds to have discussions with their corresponding committees about their budgets. Mr. Tepe and I were given direction to hash out some minor details, leaving enough undefined to have a robust conversation with the entire finance committee at this meeting today. We wanted a simple, open-ended resolution on the agenda that the finance committee could forward with their suggestions from this meeting so that department heads and electeds could have meaningful discussions with their corresponding committees to help identify possible reductions and/or revenue sources. Instead, there are 4 very detailed resolutions on this agenda, one of which has absolutely nothing to do with what we are tasked to do. This resolution authorizes a charge back to the finance and HR departments for them doing their respective jobs. Is the sheriff going to start charging us for patrol of this campus? Is the state's attorney going to start charging us when they have to do extra work to respond to county board member questions? Is buildings going to charge us to shovel our sidewalks when it snows? Are all departments now going to be charged for using county services? Additionally, on Friday, August 9th, Mr. Tepe and I were CC'd on an email from Kathy Hopkinson to Dale Berman that stated that in a meeting held on Wednesday with Madam Chair and Jamie Labrillo, the thinking was to replace the metric that Mr. Tepe and I had finally agreed on during our 3-hour-long meeting and apply budget cuts only to offices and departments over 5% of the budget. Neither Madam Chair nor Ms. Labrillo was present at that Friday brainstorming session, and neither is a member of the Finance Committee. And if some of you have no idea to what I refer, It is because Chairman Berman asked that our original recommendations be used and all aforementioned emails have been recalled. Recently, several county board members commented on our governance through committee structure and the importance of committee chairs having autonomy over their respective agendas and the importance of honoring the work of each committee. What happened here should stand as an example of why we need to make sure committee chairs have control of their own agendas and why we should respect the work of fellow board members. Had I not reached out to Dale Berman, the changes that Kathy Hopkinson forwarded from the Wednesday meeting with Madam Chair and Ms. Labrillo would have replaced the spreadsheet that Mr. Tepe and I had agreed to bring forward to the entire committee for conversation. I have to ask, is this how we want to govern? Because I don't. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll start a new business with our fiscal.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
yes, I would like to ask that with respect to the resolutions on the agenda,
Yes.
under point B, point C, and point E, those three resolutions be tabled. I'm moving for that.
Second,
C, you said
E, C, and E is in Edward.
B, C, and E?
E is in boy, C is in Charlie, E is in Edward.
Sorry, Sanchez here at the point of information. Would that be a motion to table or postpone?
Table. And if I may, we do have a second on that. This isn't open for discussion, so we need to vote.
This is a privileged motion. It is not debatable.
Would the clerk call the roll, please?
I'm sorry, is there no discussion?
No, not on the table.
Not on the
motion.
table.
Juby,
3
Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Tepe,
Zepi, no.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Berman.
Berman, no.
They are tabled 4-2.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
If I may, I would like to suggest we can discuss anything we want pertaining to those tabled resolutions. And obviously, we still have the resolution on the sales tax that we can discuss and vote on if we decide to. But I think considering all the information that has come out and the fact that, number one, a number of us on the Finance Committee were not even made aware of these resolutions until we saw it in our email on Friday afternoon. And I will not vote on anything that I don't have time to review and study and talk to my fellow committee members on. So I think what we need to do is look at a couple of different things to discuss other options, because I do believe there are other options. But the one thing that bothers me the most about this current situation is the fact that 3 years ago, I went to Madam Chair and asked her to get a committee together to start talking about a retail sales tax. In those last 2.5 to 3 years, we haven't done that. So the public has no idea what that would entail or what is involved in that. But during that 2.5 to 3 year period, we've talked about building a new administration building, and I think we spent about $750,000 on a study to decide whether or not we wanted to do that. We've also talked about building a new health department at maybe $10 to $15 million. We've had no discussion on retail sales tax, and we need to educate the public. And if in fact the resolution that's still on the agenda is going to be considered and potentially amended and passed, the education process for the public and for all the people in the county has to start now, because ultimately for us as a committee or as a board to come to the departments 4 months before the new budget year and say, we're cutting your budgets by 10% or whatever, I think is irresponsible. I think what we need to do is explain to everyone that We have to come up with solutions now and enact those solutions. And if we don't, over the last 4 years, the same thing's going to happen. Payroll has gone up over the last 4 years for union and non-union combined, 41%. Revenues have gone up 15%. We've got a 25 to a 26% deficit right there. Until we address these issues and find ways of generating more income, which in my opinion is the retail sales tax, which I think we need to implement, but we've got to educate people before we present it. And we can put it on the ballot in April. But without the proper education and information out there, it's going to be very difficult to pass. If that doesn't pass, we then have to realize that we are going to have to make cuts. Where those cuts are going to come from, I don't know. But we can't just go to our committees and elected officials 4 months before the budget and say, oh, we're cutting your budget 10%. That's irresponsible and physically the wrong way to handle this. So I would like to discuss other options now at the meeting, and then also take a look at the resolution on the retail sales tax.
Madam Chair?
Thank you. Just a point of clarity. I was just going to listen, but obviously I'm going to be speaking right now. And then I'll go back to listening to what this committee decides to do. To correct Ms. Juby's assertion, at the last meeting that occurred on Wednesday, that was a 2-hour-long meeting with Mr. Berman present. Every resolution is brought forward by him, not by myself. He was there at the meeting and agreed to each one of these resolutions through conversation and negotiation. We were very sensitive to what was occurred consistently, the conversation that occurred between Mr. Tepe and Ms. Juby. Their thoughts were constantly brought forward to seek compromise, because I was told very clearly by all parties involved that after a 3-hour meeting with Mr. Tepe and Ms. Juby, no compromise was brought forward. So we're trying to do that as best as possible to allow this conversation to occur. Secondly, Mr. Leonard, for 3 years, when I first arrived here, I was looking for other resources so that the county would not have to raise its property tax levy. With you and I both agree, for our taxpayers is onerous, not on the county side, which has been stagnant for 13, 14 years now, but all other taxing agencies. Property taxes are high in King County. It's something we can all agree to. We have no surplus in our revenue like our municipalities do. We are a lean, very lean budget, which has occurred with the depressed salaries that have been occurring unless with 2 years ago, when this board generously agreed to increase that. And that was met with some fraud and spite as well. And you've heard today very well that finally people are being paid equitably. You've also agreed to go out to an external study to see how we compare to other agencies, how other county boards and other counties on how they pay their employees. That is being processed as we speak, and that's something that you agreed upon. But let's go back to the sales tax levy. I asked our previous CFO to give you a report on what it would be, and it failed. You said, let's put it off. I asked our current CFO to present it. I asked our state's attorney to give you public information, public discourse. It was in the newspaper. The problem was that this board kept on voting it down. A committee, sir, cannot be formed until this board decides what aspect of the public sales tax you would like to go to, whether it be transportation, whether it be capital, where it would be public health or public safety. Unlike the Forest Preserve District, which has a main focus and has a not-for-profit agency able to support it because they are aligned with the focus, we do not have a conservation foundation here. We do not have a not-for-profit for better county government or help the responsible finance committee, not-for-profit. We do not have that. We cannot make a decision on what volunteers, what community members to reach out to until this board decides what it wants to do. Voted against. Respected Ms. Juby has voted against every tax levy that has come up suggested. She has been opposed to the sales tax levy. Several of you have as well. So I have made every effort to move this forward. I have said publicly in presentations that I have been in favor of the sales tax levy for discussion. And yet it constantly is not moved forward. Taxing is hard. We've heard just a comment here from a public member that she is opposed to it. I have been made teased because I brought in a sample of what this would be for our taxpayers, what a penny on the dollar would look like. And I have been put down because of that. And now we're facing a budget deficit of $29 million. Next year's forecast is $40 million. And we look at public safety and we see the work that they are doing. You can no longer turn their back on this reality. So let's not do rhetoric. I ask you, please, come up with a solution. Stop name calling and solve it. It's been talked about for 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Julie?
Well, first of all, it was the gas tax I was against, not the levy. I would like to address a comment that was just made. Mr. Tepe and I did disagree that the cut should happen in 2025. But what came forth from our Friday meeting was that we agreed to open discussion with each committee. We agreed to suggest a starting point as conversation only. We agreed to the committees meeting with their reports for compromise on the budget. And we agreed that we should keep the $4 million in the general budget. So to anyone who said we did not agree to that thing that we put forth is mistaken. Correct, Mr. Tepe?
I'm sorry, may I speak? Yes, you may speak. All right, Ms. Juby is accurate. Okay, we spent 3 hours and I think we'll find that we both have a mutual level of respect for each other, but we did agree on that. Okay, and I don't want to address necessarily everything that's gone on. I want to look at it from a slightly different perspective. You know, 3.5 years ago when I joined this board, I knew that we had a budget crisis coming. Okay, and I'm unfortunately one of the ones that have brought this up over the years. I've been very consistent about that. Despite attacks on me personally about wanting to raise taxes, I saw that we had a revenue gap that was just not going to be able to be filled. And we had to work on it. I've voted for just about every opportunity to increase that, regardless of how personally distasteful I may think it is. It's still necessary in order to run this place. Okay, we've had great people come to us, and I'm in awe of the kinds of results that have been achieved, particularly by the sheriff, okay, by the state's attorney, okay, by the public defender's office, by the court services. These are all organizations that have done a phenomenal job, whether it's in reducing recidivism, whether it's in really defending the clients that are necessary out there, or whether it's out there going and doing more and more things. And this board has approved all of that. We finally created some financial equity so that people could be paid properly, not only within the court system, but within this entire community. So there's so many positive things that have been done by this board. But what we failed to do is to come up with a proposal to produce revenue. And that, you know, everybody's been saying gee, there are only a few of us that stood up and said, we need to really approach this by increasing revenue. It's the board that's failed these organizations, not these organizations that have failed the board. And it's up to us, unfortunately, to deal with it. The reality of the fact that we're 29 million, actually it would have been $39 million in the hole this year. And the fact that we're going to be at least $40 million in the hole next year is just a disaster. And it's a disaster that we have to start dealing with now. So it's not only increasing revenue, unfortunately, it's going to be tightening the belt. And if we don't have that discussion on how to start doing that and do it in a cooperative manner, not only with the people that have spoken today, but every one of our departments, okay, we're just going to really have a disaster, because when you run out of money, there is no deficit funding in county finance. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Sanchez, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess we're talking about the sales tax right now, so I'll keep it to that. I do have some other comments on the other resolutions. I think I'm hearing from some of my colleagues a similar feeling that I share, which is frustration. We have discussed the concept of a sales tax and what that need is at length. It seems we've discussed this concept. When it comes to putting this into a practical working plan, it seems we keep falling short. And like with the resolution today, where it just appears on the agenda, this happened before. I believe it was an executive committee meeting many months ago, where we were expressing our frustration and the anxiety of what we're going to do with this fiscal cliff that has been talked about for at least 5 or 6 years since I've been on the board. Then all of a sudden the next week there's a resolution on there proposing a 1% sales tax. It's like, well, where did that come from? That was just placed on there with no real conversation. What we've needed is some kind of working committee, ad hoc or whatever, that really dives into the subject, that really explores what the various options look like, and then comes up with a recommendation. I don't know why we haven't done that. I proposed that months ago. I sent an email out to the whole board because it just seemed like we were floundering in our conversations. And I said, let's just go this direction. At least it's something to talk about. And then we came back at another finance meeting, and I think we spent about 2 hours just kind of swimming in circles and ended up saying, oh, well, let's just have some special finance committee meetings. And now that we're having those, we're still not operating in a strategic manner. And that's what we're lacking. We're lacking that strategic leadership. Just placing something on the agenda without, this concept of 1%. Why not 0.5%? Why not 0.75%, 0.25%? We haven't had those conversations. Just placing it on the agenda to then have the conversation. It's like, again, we need to do some research, and we should have started it a year ago. We've been talking about this for years. I honestly don't know why we're still at this point where we haven't moved off the line, when we're still talking about, oh, what could it be like if we start really going after this?
Do you have a positive comment to make towards this?
Oh, I'm expressing
committee?
frustration because we keep coming back to these meetings, Mr. Chairman. And I'm not finding that we're focused. I'm not finding that there's something put forward for us to work with. We're just kind of moving in circles and
Well, I disagree with you.
even this idea that, the resolution for adopting recommendations for county offices and departments. I mean, my recollection was this was supposed to be just a conversational piece. Like, oh, if we could trim $10 million from the budget, how much could everybody chip in on that? Knowing that we're not going to get to $10 million in cuts reasonably. Like, if you guys don't know that, I'll tell you, there's no way we can go to all these offices and departments and find $10 million worth of cuts. You heard today why. The biggest part of our budget spoke to us today and said, we can't do that. You guys are asking way too much of us. And I knew that, but it's supposed to be a conversational piece. Instead, there's this resolution that's scaring the shit out of everybody. Pardon my language. Instead of just having these conversations in a strategic manner. And I don't know who is the point person that would be having these conversations. Things like that have not been determined. So I'm expressing my frustration because we keep coming back and kicking this can further and further, and it's very frustrating to me why we keep running into this when some of us have proposed solutions. Where's the committee exploring this? Why is this committee not exploring a sales tax? There's a resolution instead of a discussion. So again, I'm just asking for some strategic leadership so that we can actually get these things done. This is big stuff, and we have other big stuff to be spending our time on as county
Mr.
board.
Sanchez, I'm going to cut you off at this point in time.
I'm done. Thank you.
Ms. Lewis?
Good morning, everybody. So, couple random thoughts. First of all, I'm actually very proud of the salary increases that we have put through in the last year for equity. I loved hearing this morning from our elected officials that they're getting to be staffed to the correct levels because of this. So I think that that was an excellent move we did. I am also very pleased of the way that we have, I think, very fiscally looked at ARPA and spent as much of those monies possible as we could to help construction, putting in new HVACs, doing in, lots of building things that normally we could never have afforded. So I think we've done an excellent job on that. Unfortunately, we had that horrible thing that's happened to every single person. We had that inflation. Yeah, we have not been able to keep up with. Nobody, I think, knew that our gas, our electric, all these things were going to go to the levels that they have. So part of that is why we're stuck here. And I don't think sitting here and blaming Madam Chair or blaming me or blaming anybody is going to help at this point, because we all, if we had that crystal ball, it's the Monday morning quarterback. I can't sit here and say that if the Bears had a better quarterback, they might have won on Monday morning, because that's just not the way it works. So we have to go with what we got today and look forward. I think there was some great things that were brought forward. The $4 million, not moving it to the construction budget, I think is going to be a big help. The RTA transfer, I think might have been a good idea, but I would have liked to have heard from the transportation department of what that was going to mean to them before we just took it. The resolution E, I had several questions on because I just didn't quite understand it. But back to the sales tax, I think since that's what we're discussing this morning, we just need to focus on that. And in my opinion, we need to pass this resolution regardless of whether it got put on here or it didn't. I think it's the right thing to do so that we can look forward and we can get the right people into place to actually get the research out there so we have a chance of passing this. Thank you.
I want to comment. This committee's responsibility is to come up with a balanced budget that we can recommend to the board. And we've been working on this, talking around it for so long. There's many different ways we can work at trying to cut the budget. The whole idea, we all think that we need to pass a sales tax. But I'll tell you, our voters are not going to vote on a sales tax unless we've done the best we can to reduce our budget. And that's what this whole effort is proposing ways that we can reduce the budget. If we don't come up with a factual way to do it or an accurate way to do it, then we certainly have. The only way we have to go is to go out for increased taxes. But we talk around it. You say you don't like the resolutions. Last meeting, I tried to get a consensus of what people felt, and no one wanted to even come up with raise their hands. So I think that the resolution was there for a reason. The resolution are there for us to make some damn decisions, and we haven't made them. And now we want to put it off some more. Are there other things? Yes, there's all kinds of things we talked about. We talk about freezing salaries. We talk about freezing hiring. We talk about early retirements. We talk about all kinds of different things of reducing our budget. But let's make a decision as to what it's going to be and make that recommendation to the board. Mr. Leonard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since we have one resolution still on the agenda to discuss, I would like to move that we discuss and potentially approve that resolution. I need a second on that.
Second.
My comment is, you said that you had other ways of reducing the budget. I think we ought to discuss those first before we talk about. That was your comment. You had other ways of reducing the budget. Let's hear it.
Well, I think there are a lot of ways. Number one,
Well, let's hear them.
okay. First of all,
There is a motion and a second.
yeah, there is a motion second on the floor.
I can pull my second if
Okay, yeah. I'll
we should
pull it
have
too.
conversation first,
I
then I'll
think
pull
so.
my second.
We can have conversation first or second. I just thought if we wanted to do something concrete before the discussion, we could look at the resolution, see what we could do on that. I think there are a lot of ways that we can improve this budget deficit. As I had said at the last meeting, and I said this in front of everybody, I was in agreement on the, pardon me? I'm sorry. I was in agreement on the RTA sales tax being transferred. I suggested we not add 4 million into the capital management plan. Those are two areas that are going to reduce the deficit by about $9 million. Now, we also have reserve money too, but what I need to find out from our financial director, excluding cuts to departments, what other ways can we balance this budget?
Take it out of reserves.
Well, that's an option.
There's a multitude of, in terms of, my number one solution is to raise revenues. That is my number one solution. The capital projects fund for the county, which is the single fund for all of our facility improvement projects, our big technology projects. The only source of revenue for that fund has been from the general fund. There's like a less than $100,000 in video gaming tax that goes into that every year. This past couple of years, we have been lucky to receive some ARPA funding to catch up on some long-term projects that haven't been done. But there is no plan at this county to fund when you have to replace information technology equipment, when you have to replace election equipment. We purchased our election equipment, our new election equipment out of essentially reserves that we were able to get because we funded our general fund with one-time federal revenues, which in my opinion, we should have never, ever used one-time federal revenues to pay routine operating salaries in the sheriff's office. That created a false sense of that we have all this extra money. We should have never used the ARPA funds. Again, my opinion, we should have never used, we used between CARES Act and ARPA Act revenues, we used almost $25 million in federal revenues just to pay salaries. And so now we find ourselves in this place where we're in this deficit. The whole point of balancing a budget is not to use reserves. You should never be using reserves for routine operating expenses. For capital, yes, but for routine operating expenses, you shouldn't be using reserves. We should have new revenues to match your operating expenses. Just on the sales tax, we have presented information since I've been here. We presented at least 2 different estimates from the Illinois Department of Revenue on how much would be raised based on different sales tax rates. In the information that I handed out to the board over the weekend, I identified that it is $80 million of the general fund expenses that are not funded by dedicated revenue sources are public safety and judiciary. A 1% sales tax based on IDOR's most recent estimate would raise $69 million, which would fund public safety.
Mr. Leonard.
Mr. Chairman, your question about how do we raise funds, and that's why I wanted to move forward on the sales tax. That is the only way we are going to be able to balance our budget for the next 5 to 10 years, by getting the public to agree to vote to incorporate a retail sales tax. I think 1% is way too high. That's 69 million. But I would be in agreement to maybe 0.5%, which would generate about 34 million, which would get us to a point where we could balance our budget without reserves for at least the next 5 years. So my solution to all of this, and I've said it for 2.5, 3 years now, is increasing property taxes at a rate of about 2 million a year. Compounded would take 10 years to equate to what 0.5% sales tax incorporation would generate, $34 million. So, I think it's the type of thing that we don't have a lot of options or a lot of solutions. The only real option we have is to increase retail sales tax, or to incorporate it, which we haven't, at 0.5%. So, we can talk around everything else we want as much as we want, but the bottom line is, I think this year what we're going to have to do is transfer some RTA sales tax, reduce the capital building management fund, and then look at reserves and maybe some very, very small cuts in some departments in the county. Those are my
Why did
solutions.
you table those resolutions? Those are the things you want to do. Why don't we?
We had an agreement last meeting. We were going to discuss these at the meeting.
Well,
We
that's
weren't
what
gonna
it
have
was,
re-
a resolution. We
No.
discussed.
We had agreed to discuss. We didn't agree to have resolutions that we were presented Friday afternoon at 4:00. So that is why I was against those resolutions. But if you notice, I did not delete the retail sales tax resolution, and that's going to be our solution.
Our solution, excuse me, our solution is that we have to make an effort to decrease our budget ourselves, not just say that we can't do anything and go out. So therefore, we need to talk about the things that were resolutions that we tabled.
Well, I've come up with 2 solutions, Mr. Chairman, that would generate about 9 million. What are your solutions?
Well, those are the resolutions we had. The
Mr.
resolutions on.
I'm agreeing to discuss those, and I'm agreeing to have a consensus on that. I'm just saying, you say we have to find other things. Well, explain to me.
No,
what
no.
they are.
Those are other things. Those are the other things that
So
we,
those 2 things. So we're still 20 million deficit.
fine.
So how do we solve that?
Put it on me. Ms. Dewey, or Ms.
Mr. Berman, I graciously would like to speak. I'm not on this committee, but I wanted to address something. Mr. Berman, you said earlier that there would be no appetite for the public to vote on a tax increase. Obviously, we've talked about this collectively as a board since I've been elected here. I heed your warning there, and I would like to say that we have to overturn every rock. So that leads me to a couple questions that just came to my mind. We had last year discussed not increasing those property taxes, and the year before we didn't vote to increase those property taxes. So overturning a rock really quick. My first question is, we have reserves that are set, and then we have what we have called, and this is the rock that we don't look under very often, but what we call the excess reserves. That has come up in these meetings, the finance committee meetings recently, and it was stated that we should not have a penny of excess reserves if we're asking our taxpayers to pay more money. I need to know, I think I know, but I need to hear, how much money is in the excess reserves, and can you define exactly what excess means? Because to the layperson, I don't think they're understanding these 2 pots, because they are 2 pots.
Right. And I first want to also say just on one other thing, after last week's or a week and a half ago, special finance committee, we were told that in order for at this meeting today, for any action of the finance committee to be taken, we would need to have a resolution. that we can't have consensus at finance committee meetings, which is why we drafted the resolution today, which is resolution item B, 7B, and that it could be amended on the fly here in the meeting, but that if we don't have a resolution on the agenda to take some action, this finance committee cannot take any action. So that is why we had that resolution on the agenda. In answer to the question on excess reserves, so it's prudent finances that you always have some reserves for quote unquote emergencies. The county, in most counties, if you look at our surrounding counties, there's some differences, and if you look at best practices from the Government Finance Officers Association, 90 days is considered, a good amount of reserves to have. Our general fund built up more than we needed, more than 90 days, because during COVID, instead of using our regular sales tax and income tax and property tax, et cetera, instead of using those revenues to pay primarily, there were some other departments, but primarily sheriff's adult correction staff salaries, we used one-time federal monies because it was there to pay salaries in our general fund. So we flooded our general fund. We essentially used ARPA monies instead of the regular routine monies.
So
to
Ms.
pay
Hopkinson, I'm
salaries.
going to cut you off because I understand how we got there.
Yeah.
I need to know how much money is in the excess.
So as of the end of 2023, which our audit is complete, so that's a good number, we had $87 million in our general fund. 90 days is calculated, should be calculated based on what are your future years, your next year's expenditures. So we should have around 36 million. So if you do the math between 87. Now, what I pointed out to everybody is that from 2022 to 2023, our general fund dropped from 98 million to 87 million because we used those reserves. We built up the reserves and now we're using those reserves. Our 2024 budget, we have a built-in use of reserves of 10 million. So if we follow our budget, we're going to drop another 10 million. Our 2025 budget, right now, we've got a built-in 29 million, right? So basically, if you follow that, by 2027, we will be using our emergency reserves.
Okay, so that answers my question because we're not quite there yet, which
Right.
is the conversation that happened last year and then the year before. And the reason I bring that up is because people are literally panicking. I don't know who approaches you, but the people that work for this county, they come and they call on us and they say, hey, what's going on? So I needed to identify that we have excess reserves. That is a rock that we don't talk about very often, but it is in fact there. Secondarily, to Mr., if I may continue, Mr. Leonard, you said, 10 years from now, if we have not addressed this compounded property tax issue, will we be in the exact same position we are today? And I would argue that we will, because the compounding matters, and I respect everybody here, but we have consistently put this off where other counties, surrounding agencies have not, other taxing bodies have not. And we are here today trying to solve that inaction, and we can do it. We just have to find the courage to do it. Many people here have had this conversation. We've sat here and had these conversations, but your votes end up being no. So I ask you, in 10 years, will we be in the same position we are if we have a freeze on our property taxes? I think the answer is yes. So I just wanted to identify those things. And to our staff, don't panic. We're gonna figure this out.
Debbie?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree to some extent with both Mr. Leonard and with Mr. Berman, okay? We need to look at revenue. But if we don't do a job in looking at cutting expenses, I don't think we're going to be looked at reasonably. And the key thing that Ms. Juby and I accomplished last Friday was to come up with a starting approach for a discussion. Our approach was again to present numbers for discussion. And it was, here's the amount that would have to be cut by these departments if we were going to mathematically look at a $15 million reduction. I don't think there's any way that we can actually come up with that. But if we don't explore reducing these budgets and the impact that it would have, I don't think we've done a job for our constituents, nor do I think we've done a job for ourselves. Again, we need to increase revenue, but if we don't have that hard discussion that Ms. Juby and I feel should happen at this meeting, okay, we're not doing our job.
All right, well, we started with a budget presentation, didn't we?
Well, I think we were just going to be going over that list.
Well, so we're saying we can discuss these things, but not gonna take a vote on it. I don't know how good that is, but I guess that's what we'll do. So let's talk about Resolution B, not in a resolution format, but for discussion standpoint.
Been tabled. It's been tabled, Mr.
We're
Chairman.
saying we can't.
No.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
may I don't know if this is procedurally correct, if I can do this. May I make a motion to remove the table on Resolution B? And then if we get that, then we would like to remove the exhibit so that we can set forth and have the flow of discussion that Mr. Tepe and I thought that would allow us to then determine a consensus to send forward to the committees for their discussion.
Mr. Chairman? Yeah, Ms. Juby, if I understand your intent, I think the appropriate motion would be, as someone who voted on the prevailing side on the motion to table, would be a motion to reconsider the
Okay,
motion to table. And if that were successful, then you could proceed to the next step.
okay. I would like to make a motion to reconsider the tabling of the resolution adopting recommendations for county offices and departments for proposed reductions.
Tepe seconds.
I'm sorry, to clarify that, is just one resolution that you're,
All I'm doing is I'm trying to bring back our ability to have a conversation in this meeting that sends forth some type of recommendation. But I will also be making a motion to modify what we have written because I don't want that to go forward.
that's fine.
Right.
So you're saying B,
No, I'm saying that we rescind our tabling of that so that we can have discussion on that item.
Well, no, this is a motion to reconsider only as to item B.
Right, only item B.
Resolution under item B.
Resolution B.
all right.
And there was a
Seconded
second
by
too.
Mr.
Second.
Tepe.
Tepe seconded.
Call the roll, please.
Oh,
Juby,
Should I?
Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Berman.
I would like to recall all of them, but I will vote no.
Passes 5 yeses, 1 no.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a motion to remove Exhibit A from
Actually, Ms.
the,
Juby, first you need a motion to put
the-
oh, to
B,
put it back on
to
the thing?
put it back to move to
Jesus.
approve it.
Okay, I make a motion to put it back on the agenda.
It's back on the
On the
agenda
agenda.
What do I need a motion for?
To
to
approve.
approve it before you can amend it.
Okay, motion to approve.
Deppie seconds.
Oh, we have a motion and a second.
Now we can have discussion.
We need
Now you
discussion.
can,
Discussion on this?
So is this where I can discuss removing the, oh, okay, all right. So I would like to remove all dollar amounts that are included in the resolution as presented based on what dollar amounts we may consider after talking as a group. And I would like to remove Exhibit A, remove it because we may make changes, or should I just zero it out and keep it as Exhibit A? I don't know how we do this.
Do you have a motion to amend to remove Exhibit A?
Yes, yes, and also all of the other dollar amounts in the resolution. I don't need to be more specific than that. Okay, that's my motion.
I'll second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Juby?
Juby, aye.
Lewis?
Lewis, yes.
Sanchez?
Sanchez, yes.
Pepe?
Deppie, yes.
Leonard?
Leonard, yes.
Schmidt?
Herman, yes. Okay, so we've now at the motion,
We can discuss.
would you, who has a proposal then to replace those numbers with some new numbers?
Mr. Chairman, Sanchez here.
Yes. Richard
Uh,
Sanchez, sorry.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to understand our timeline because I thought that at the next regular finance committee meeting, we're supposed to be presenting a balanced budget to move forward to executive and the county board. But this resolution has a committee flow that also goes executive and county board meeting. This resolution won't even hit county board until next month after our next regular meeting. So this is kind of pushing things back by at least a month. Is that correct? Is that what I'm understanding?
I don't,
So the thinking is that there would, the finance committee would take action today based on the final outcome of this resolution in terms of discussions with departments, et cetera, and that the departments would come back, or that those discussions would occur and that a balanced budget would return in 2 weeks at the regularly scheduled finance committee.
yes. All right.
Okay, because just I guess looking at the committee flow on this, it extends it out to executive and county board, so that would put us in a bit of a time crunch for the 2-week window. I guess I have a question, and this is probably maybe Mr. Shepro question. Do we need a formal resolution just to suggest that we want to at least try and move in this direction, to just have conversations with elected officials and department heads to ask them how much they can cut from their budget? Do we need a formal resolution, or can we just in our conversation say, we would like to go in this direction and then allow those conversations to take place?
if you just want to have a discussion, then there's no actual direction or action. And I think that would be appropriate. If you're attempting to give a specific direction for them to do a specific task, then you would need a motion, I believe, and I'll ask ASA Brady to weigh in on that.
If the intention is to give finance staff direction on how to present a balanced budget, we would recommend, it's probably safest in order to avoid Open Meetings Act concerns, either to do it via resolution or to take a vote in order to give that formal request now that this meeting has been noticed under those principles. I don't think leaving a meeting with a consensus to direct staff to do it is enough without it having been fully noticed under the Open Meetings Act. So I think for today's purposes, you can do it that way because there was notice of the item on the agenda. But in general, it just depends. To answer your question, Mr. Sanchez.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I'm just trying to, like, process wise, what's the best way for us to get to what we're trying to get to? And I know, like, the concept originally was $15 million worth of cuts, and then I think what I saw the other day was $10 million. I don't know how realistic that is, if we're just gonna direct all these departments to cut, however percentage.
Mr. Sanchez,
you
we're
put
looking
in.
for numbers, and those are the suggested numbers. If you have some numbers you'd like to propose, fine.
Well,
I think
well,
that's what we're looking for. We're looking for somebody's suggestion as to what those reductions can be. We had two people work on this and come up with what they felt arrived at the number of reduction that we were looking at. But if we didn't want to move on that, then we've got to come up with some different numbers.
Well, so I understand that. I'm just trying to
So
understand.
suggest some numbers then, please.
Well, I guess first, Mr. Chairman, I'm trying to understand as a committee member what our options are here. And I was trying to understand the rationale of requiring a resolution versus us just discussing something and then us moving in a certain direction, because the $15 million amount that was first proposed and then the $10 million, these are arbitrary numbers.
It's an arbitrary number.
This is us just trying to come up with some kind of marker to try and meet, but obviously, even the 10 million was very shocking for a lot of departments. So that, it seemed like, how do we come up with a number? I don't know. I'm just trying to say, what if we can't come up with a number? What if we can't figure out, well, they have to cut, $5 million in total from the budget. Can't we just have the conversation of asking them, how much can you cut? Instead of starting with a number, let them tell us how much they can cut, and then we backfill in the rest with reserves. So I guess, yeah, that's just what I'm trying to understand is the actions that we're taking and what options that we have.
Thank you, Mr.
All right.
Solis.
Yeah, do we, have we seen, and maybe I missed, have we seen the recommendations from Ms. Juby and Mr. Tepe?
Debbie?
They were emailed to all of you last week by the county office.
Okay.
I have a copy of it and can share my screen.
Could you?
To whom was it mailed? Everybody?
They'll have it.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
may I add a clarification? These numbers that he's going to put up on the screen are not numbers that we are confident to put forward to the various committees. These were starting points because Vern and I were here and here when we walked in the door. Also, I'm not sure which list he's going to put up, but there are several more departments in there that we agreed to put on there, not necessarily because we agreed that they should be on there, but because we wanted to spark discussion, because like everyone else, we're hearing ad nauseum that we have this problem and we keep running in circles. And we are just trying to sit down with the committees and have them say what they can cut, what they can't cut. And once Vern is done with that, I would then like to ask a question about grants, which I might forget to ask. So if you guys could remind me when we move on, because we are totally out of order on how we're doing all this. Which is good because we're getting somewhere. I hope.
Chair.
Thank you. Just a reference point. There are $20 million worth of either $10 million of budget shifting, $10 million worth of budget cuts, $9 million or $10 million coming out of the reserves. The reserves are a finite resource for us, and to reflect back on what Mr. Leonard has said several times regarding a potential sales tax levy, he has forecasted that no matter what the rate may be, it'll fail next year, which means the next time it could possibly be put up will be in November of 26. Money for that sales tax revenue will not be allocated to the county until mid of 28. So it was with hope
that the reserve fund that had been left over of the $35 million for the 90-day and the depleting $87 million, which is now much lower than that, can be held back as long as possible to keep funding the county board. So that was, that's a rationale on why this number was brought forward of $10 million, as well as the reallocation of the capital fund and the reallocation of the RTA sales tax fund.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Leonard.
Yes, Madam Chair, I believe that if the referendum, the ballot on the referendum would fail in April, we could then submit it for the primaries in 26.
That's correct. That is an option as
General
well.
election.
That is an
So if
option
it's
as well.
November, it would be March.
It could be in March.
Yes.
It could also be in March, correct? It very much.
I mean, and my prediction about it not being passed was trying to be realistic, not pessimistic. However, if the proper education gets out there and people are aware of the fact of the financial crisis we're in now, there's a possibility. I'm not saying it's.
There's always
can't
hope.
happen.
There's always hope.
Yes.
There's always hope.
Thank you.
Several.
That the board cannot advocate for or against a public question. And the discussion that I think was had for over 2 years was if there's to be support, it would have to come from some outside body or group of people. The board cannot expend funds or use facilities or resources other than for educational purposes.
Right.
Mr. Leonard.
Yes, I have a question. Madam Chair had mentioned that she couldn't put a committee together until the board approved this for a sales tax. Can't we have an exploratory committee?
I think the topic right now that we're waiting on are just your conversation about recommended budget reductions.
But how do we come up with those if we?
All you would have to act as a consensus or as a recommendation or as a resolution, pick what area it is to go into. And then you'll realize how much money you need and what the allocation will be, whether you've got those 4 opportunities. Pick an opportunity, and then we can start addressing the committee and who would be specialized. You don't want to have hypothetically, you don't want to have an architect talk to you about judicial public safety funds. You don't want to have a physician talk about capital funds. So just pick out which area you'd like this tax to go into, and then that group, that advisory group, along with board members, can be developed very easily.
My comment. It appears this committee, Finance Committee, is not interested in doing anything other than taking $29 million out of reserve to cover our deficit and then going on trying to salvage that by passing a sales tax referendum in the future. That's the concept I get from this, all our discussion. We've talked around doing anything else, things that we have the opportunity to do with
Mr. Chairman.
internally. And if that's our decision, then
Wait,
fine.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Before we got sidetracked, we were actually looking at what Ms. Juby and Mr. Tepe put forward on amendment or resolution B. So can we just get back to that?
Come up with some numbers, please.
Well, I'd like to see what they've put up there and talk about it a minute.
Mr. Tepe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me share with you the discussion and the results of that discussion that Ms. Juby and I had last Friday or Friday a week ago. What we looked at is that we looked at those departments and elected officials areas that affected the general fund, that were funded to some degree from the general fund and their amount of funding out of the general fund. Okay. When we looked at that, there were several departments that we felt were relatively, that we felt were small enough to where they could not really be impacted effectively by some kind of a significant budget cut. So those that you see at the bottom of this particular report are those departments where we agreed, Ms. Juby and I agreed to take them out of our recommendation for consideration. Okay. That left this group, which I have sorted by their contribution to the general fund. And then there's an arithmetic calculation of how much would have to be cut from their budget if we were going to take care of the entire deficit, or how much would be cut from their budget if we were going to take $10 million or $15 million out of it. I think Ms. Juby and I completely understood that we wanted to create a discussion point so that this committee or this committee could discuss these particular numbers and have the results of our conversation put forward. You know, we also had discussions about removing the $4 million that's been allocated to the building fund. And we felt that the RTA reallocation should be discussed. So that is essentially the key things that were accomplished some 10, 11 days ago. This was the email that was sent out, okay, just showing the mathematical calculations, which are definitely extreme. There's no way that any of these departments could cut without really significant cuts. So what is going to be our approach? Our objective, again, is that we should have the discussion as a committee as to what we ask of these departments and elected officials, because the key thing that we can do is just put forth the amount of money that they have, and then it's up to them to tell us, you know, what they can and cannot do with that money. And I agree with that. So that's where we ended things. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'm looking at the email that was sent out by Kathy on Friday at 4:11 with the adjusted amounts that I don't know who came up with, if it was Kathy or Leslie or Vern or whoever, but on those, that shows at a $10 million level, the percentage cuts we'd ask for from multiple departments. In my opinion, that isn't feasible for us to ask for $10 million from those departments. Understanding my position on that, if we can't find areas to generate additional revenue, which we really can't, we have just one option, and that's taking some additional money out of reserves. Now, I'm not saying that I can't live with some reductions in the departments, but I think that's really the 300-pound gorilla right now in the room. This 9.4% across the board on those departments, which equates to a $10 million cut, I can't vote for, I won't vote for, I don't agree with. But I'm not saying that I'm not open-minded to a smaller percentage in some of those departments, but not at that level. And that's really the
propose
only
those
way.
percentages right now.
I'm sorry?
You propose those percentages right now. We've talked around the numbers. Let's throw out some numbers that we can work with then.
Okay,
You're
well
willing to
then,
work with
then
some.
let's cut it in half and go to 4.7. And that would be 5 million,
$5 million.
$5 million. And once again, this is to put forward for discussion. This isn't anything hard and firm. Yeah. So my proposal is we use a 4.7% decrease in those departments, which would cut that reduction from 10 million to 5 million.
Fantastic. Do you have a second to that motion?
What was the motion?
The motion is to reduce the cuts to the departments from the proposed 9.4% down to 4.7. In essence, what that does is it cuts the amount departments have to reduce their budgets by from 10 million to 5 million.
Okay, so
Chart is on, Kathy sent it out Friday
Right.
at 4/11. It's right there. It shows 9.4% for those departments. I'm saying let's cut it in half to 5 million.
Right,
That's
and,
my
and one of the things we discussed though on Friday was that it wasn't fair to put the same amount percentage across all of the things. And one of the things that happened that was so weird is that when the percentages were plugged into the computer, it came up as they were all the same. So that is also something I would like to talk about.
So this is inaccurate.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that when we originally started, it was the percentage that they took of the general budget applied to the amount that we wanted to cut. And then all of a sudden, all the numbers came up the same and we didn't know why. And it was kind of weird. But there's also departments on here that I really don't want to include in cuts. So I know we did not agree on that. I know, but
But I'm agreeing with you that that should be up
Right.
for discussion.
So before we start putting forth an amount or a percentage to cut, I would like to come to a consensus of who we would like to have look at their budgets. Because I think there are several places on here, especially the treasurer and the recorder who actually add to our general fund. So I would like to remove them. I would like to remove, a couple others off of there, but I would like the conversation for that before we go into the actual dollar amounts of what we're going to ask the other people to remove.
You know, and I understand that and I respect that position. However, I think it's been made abundantly clear to us today that if we're looking to cut on the average, and I'm not saying every department, but on the average, 9.4%, there are departments in the judicial and public safety arena that cannot do that and will file suit against the county about that.
Then let's
So-
remove them.
Pardon me?
Then let's remove them. If we find someone that we don't think can do that, we should remove them from this list.
But what I'm saying is let's go in with a reasonable figure for them and then let them react to that.
Okay, but I don't think there is a reasonable figure for the treasurer and the recorder who are adding to our budget. I don't think there's any reasonable amount to ask them to cut out of their budget because I don't think they should be on this list.
Well, fine, take that out. That's $175,000. That's not.
That's what I asked us to do, is to modify the list before we
We'll
put forth
modify
a
that and
percentage.
then all the other departments, if we use instead of a percentage of 9.4, we use the 4.7, we'll have roughly a little under 5 million that we're asking for in reductions from the departments.
Mr. Chairman Sanchez.
No,
Uh,
Madam Chair.
Just point of clarity for our state's attorney, this exhibit A, wasn't that stricken from speaking about with the resolution that was passed?
We rescinded that.
Right.
No, this is the Vern Tepe. I'm gonna.
This is no, but.
This is a motion.
Oh, no, I understand that. That I understand, but Mr. Leonard is referencing Exhibit A. So is Exhibit A allowed to be discussed or not?
Madam Chair, but to provide clarity, I don't think this is a
Correct. Including with Exhibit A.
no.
The resolution, yeah.
There was a motion to amend to remove Exhibit A and to remove the dollar amounts from the resolution itself. That motion passed. And so now we're discussing the original motion. If someone wants to make a motion to amend further to include figures, I don't, unless I'm mistaken, I don't believe that this, what we're modifying here is Exhibit A. What I anticipate is that there would be a further motion to amend to include a new Exhibit A and for a document reflecting the types of figures that Mr. Leonard is proposing to be that document. The original resolution is on the floor and discussion's appropriate, yeah.
All right, Mr. Sanchez has his hand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question would be for Kathy, and I don't know if she would have a figure off the top of her head.
But I mean, we're trying to come up with some kind of number rather than just being arbitrary, as much as possible, come up with a number that's a little more, grounded. So if we're looking at, and we've kind of discussed this already at some point, we're looking at, our budget year over year, what's the amount that we're over this year compared to last year? And I'm aware of at least two things that have created that increase, and one being the equity increases that have been approved, and the other being the union contracts that have come in. So there are going to be some increases from that. So my question is, after all of the approved equity increases and the union increases are factored in, how much are we over budget from last year? Do we know that dollar amount? Because maybe that's the dollar amount that we should be looking at first.
So our 2024 budget was about $122 million. The initial first draft 2025 budget is about $137 million. So about $15 million more. Included in that is proposed, again, first draft submitted was a little over $4 million to be transferred to the capital projects fund from the general fund. The 2024 budget, we did not have any transfers from the general fund to the capital projects fund. So that's about I think it was like 4.2, 4.3 million. So that is one increase that is clear from 2025 to 2024's budget. So if you take that out from 137, you're down to, let's say, 132-ish. So you're about 10 million higher than the previous year. So built into that are, yes, routine salary increases for both non-union and union employees. If you look historically at the county spending, we go up almost every year, somewhere between $5 and $7 million a year. And of course, if you do the math, you add any percent on a bigger number, you're going to get a bigger number. So it's not unusual that the budget, if you take out the capital portion of it, that it would have gone from 122 to, let's say, 132-ish. And again, you could also look at it that the 2024 budget, we didn't budget anything for capital, and maybe we should have.
Yep. Well, it would have just come out of reserve, so.
Right.
And the comment, where we at? We have a motion. Did you make a motion or?
I did. It wasn't seconded. I'd like the motion to be that for department cuts, we take all of the departments that are listed in Exhibit A, except for the last two, treasurer and recorder, delete those two, and ask all the other departments to have a percentage cut of 4.7%. And that will generate about a $5 million reduction in expenses for the 25 budget. And then obviously, if we do the RTA and we do the capital projects reductions, we're still going to be about 15 million short. However, there are some other areas where I think we may have some additional pluses. I don't think you had the new property sales tax incorporated in that yet, did you?
The new property tax on
The
real
new-
estate? No, I don't have that
Yeah.
number yet.
So, I don't know what that is, 500,000, maybe $1 million.
And I just want to remind everyone how we came up with these numbers and also how that list of departments. We took all of the general fund departments, looked at what their budgeted expenditures were, then subtracted out of that what I'm calling dedicated revenues. And the easiest example I can use is court services. They have a good portion of their budget in the general fund, which is reimbursed. They receive a significant amount of reimbursements from the state of Illinois. So we took their total general fund expenditures less dedicated revenues, meaning grant reimbursements and other fees and fines that are collected by that office, whether or not those fees or fines should be restricted. So for example, court services, those grant reimbursements must be used for court services salaries. But some of these other departments that collect fees and fines, are those restricted for those departments? Or can they be used by the general funds of the county? So what was left was which departments in the county are using what's called the general revenues, meaning property taxes, sales taxes, other types of revenues that aren't restricted and earmarked. One question that I'm going to ask on behalf of my own department, the finance department, because we're on the list, we don't charge anybody for anything. So we're on the list. So that's actually why I put that charge back, because if we were able to charge for our services, we probably wouldn't be on this list. So if you want to talk about, arbitrary or
Every department serves the county.
right,
So
right. But the difference between like an office that collects fees, we don't have, the finance department doesn't have any legal authority to collect any fees from the public. So it's just an interesting piece of information that I thought I would add.
Mr. Leonard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Even though you and I have been opposed to each other's opinions today, I do agree that we need to move forward here. And I think what we need to do, and my motion is that we take a $5 million proposed cut to all the departments. We take the RTA sales tax transfer and the capital fund transfer, and then we take 15 million from reserves. Those are my suggestions. These are not hard and fast, but at least at this point, if we present those to the departments, the elected officials, and to the committees, we can work from that point. And I think that's feasible. So that's my motion.
Question, Mr. Leonard, is the intent of that motion that it is not to forward a recommendation to the board, but to forward it to the departments for comment?
And committees, so.
And committees.
Yes.
Including the RTA and
RTA, the capital.
and the capital, bring that to
5
committee
million
as
in-
well?
Pardon me?
Bring those two suggestions to the committee for discussion as well?
All we're really doing on this is changing the department reduction from 10 million to 5 million and increasing the reserve from 10 million to 15 million.
Okay.
That's my motion. And once again, these are recommendations. These are not hard and fast. These are discussion points, but we have to have something to give to them to discuss. And I think if we start at that point, I think we have a reasonable opportunity to get this budget balanced within the time frame we have left.
All right, I'd like to propose a short recess so we can,
Well, he's going to second it.
10 seconds.
all right.
So we need to write it out.
I need
so it's
some
more
numbers.
Specific. That's why I suggested a recess.
Oh, okay, fine.
That's a recess to get the numbers down properly.
And can I
Okay.
ask a question? Because I'm confused now. So on the proposed resolution, B, the suggestion is that we're going to change the amount of reserves that are
Oh,
going to
this
be
is
used from 9.9 million to 15 million. Okay.
Or would-
We're going to remove the 4.3 million from being transferred to the capital projects fund?
No, we're leaving everything the same except the reserve and the department reduction.
Okay, but if you're leaving this, you're leaving the RTA, transferring some of the RTA transportation.
Yeah.
Well, item C is the resolution for that, and that was tabled.
Yeah, but under this resolution, we can pass this resolution. And then we don't need that other resolution then if we pass this one.
That's why we're asking for a recess.
Yeah,
so
we need a
can work on
recess
this.
just to.
Mr. Chair, Gums. What, am I I know it's very confusing day, but I thought all dollar amounts were removed.
That-
All of them. Okay.
So all of this is going to be, I'm sorry, all of this is going to be combined into one resolution rather than having three separate resolutions? Is that what I'm
Yes,
hearing?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, I have a problem with putting the RTA sales tax in there. So whatever comes through that has an RTA sales tax in there, I'm gonna have to vote no on, even if I vote yes for all the other things. So I have a problem with that because I don't think we should be making decisions for the RTA sales tax without KDOT here. I just don't.
Well, it did.
These are recommendations. These are not hard and fast. So all we're doing is suggesting this to all the departments and all the committees for their discussion and review and response back to us.
Yeah, I'd rather see that extra $6 million come out of reserves than have that
So then
something.
you're up to 21 million of the
You know what,
35
I'm
million.
fine with that as long as we move something forward so that, so the departments can actually talk with their committees. Because that's what I think we need to do.
Yeah, well, we do.
Well, my suggestion is that if you take a recess, it can be worked on. Otherwise, they're going to sit here
Yeah.
and try to write it out. And
Yeah, let's have a recess, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, may I speak? As not being a member of this committee, but having the responsibility as a board member to understand this, I would firmly request that any emails sent out to the finance committee be sent out to the entire board. As a board member, not on the finance committee, I cannot stay on top of this without receiving every email. Thank you. And this is very important stuff to understand.
And could I add one thing too
Oh,
before we recess? Just one thing. Back to what Ms. Juby and Mr. Leonard were saying. If we just change the RTA sales tax to the same as we're going to do for the other departments that we recommend they look at this cut, then that committee can come back and they can say, no, you can't do it, or yes, you can. Well, let's put that recommendation in there so they need to look at it.
That's
write
good.
it out.
And I think the motion is good.
Perfect.
Okay, because it's gonna go to the department. They're gonna respond to it.
Yeah.
All right, I declare a recess.
Voice vote or anything for recess?
Recess.
Aye.
Okay.
recess. Okay.
All right. I'd like to reconvene our meeting. Huh? We're not ready?
Bill? Bill?
All right, well. It's 11:30 and I declare our recess over. We don't, do we need to take call?
Yes.
Roll call, please.
Juby,
We hear.
Lewis. Sanchez,
Sanchez present.
Surges,
Oh, yeah.
Tepe,
I mean, it's your, okay.
Leonard,
Leonard here.
Berman.
Berman's here.
Sherrod.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Quorum.
So we have a motion and a second. And we all have a copy of that. Has everybody?
Give us 1 minute.
Could we have the state's attorney read it?
Read it out loud.
Okay, yeah, it's a motion was made by Mr. Leonard and seconded by Ms. Juby. Was it?
Tepe?
Tepe? Okay. Would you be so kind as to read our motion?
I would be happy to. Would the IT department be able to display the proposed amendment to?
There it is.
Thank you. So the motion to amend the resolution shall read, its title, adopting requests for county offices and departments for proposed reductions in the preparation of the FY 2025 county budget. Whereas the Kane County Finance Committee is responsible for recommending a balanced budget to the Kane County Executive Committee, and whereas a draft of the FY 2025 budget has been presented to the Finance Committee, and whereas the draft FY 2025 general fund budget has 28,289,520 more in expenditures than revenues, and whereas the Finance Committee recommends that $15 million in general fund balance reserves will be used in balancing the FY 2025 general fund budget. And whereas the Finance Committee recommends that the $4,349,381 budgeted in the FY 2025 for transfer from the general fund to the capital projects fund be cut from the FY 2025 budget. And whereas the Finance Committee recommends that an additional $4,031,617 in RTA transportation sales tax revenue be transferred from the Transportation Department's RTA Sales Tax Fund to the General Fund, and further recommends the County Board and Finance and Budget Committee make any necessary financial policy amendments to incorporate such changes via future resolution to be presented prior to the adoption of a FY 2025 budget. And whereas the Finance Committee has recommended for discussion in order to fulfill its obligations in presenting a balanced budget, that certain offices and departments in the general fund should present reduced FY 2025 budget in the total amount of $5 million in order for the general fund budget to be balanced as represented in Exhibit A. And whereas the preparation of the county budget for FY 2025 shall follow the process outlined in the Kane County Code and other applicable laws. Now therefore be it resolved by the Kane County Board Finance and Budget Committee that it hereby requests for discussion that the offices and departments should be there's a excess there that should probably be removed, reduce their proposed budgets by the amounts as represented in Exhibit A by August 16th, 2024. Now therefore be it further resolved by the Kane County Board Finance and Budget Committee that the Executive Director of the Finance Department is directed to present a revised proposed budget incorporating such changes at its next meeting. There's a clause in that first now therefore be it resolved paragraph that is left in error, the under their jurisdiction, that should not be there. So Mr. Leonard's motion to amend as reflected in what I've just read is, I believe, what's on the table. Additionally, there has been the Exhibit A revised per this amendment and per the committee's discussion that may also be available for display.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Rady. I just wanted to make sure that we have deleted the recorder and the treasurer from the exhibit. Okay, good.
Mr. Chair, are we open for discussion on this?
Yes, discussion, please.
I seconded it
We-
before we went on break. Oh, you did?
Original motion.
It doesn't
was
matter. It
second
has a
by-
motion and a second, so now we can open it for discussion.
Right.
Okay. I am concerned, as I have been from the very beginning, about the amounts that we're asking and that there is some understanding that this is a carved in stone amount from all these budgets. So I would like to propose an amendment on the now therefore be it resolved by the Kane County Board Finance and Budget Committee that it hereby requests for discussion that the offices and departments reduce their proposed budgets by the amount as represented in Exhibit A by August 16th of 2024. And I would like to add or provide detailed information about why such reductions cannot be sustained.
I'll second that amendment.
Thank you.
Discussion of amendment. Roll call, please.
Can I ask one
Okay.
question?
So
What's the date
Voice
you put on
vote
that?
if you want.
Friday.
The date was August 16th on the thing. I was just adding the,
Okay, gotcha.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. That amendment passed.
Well, the amendment to the revised
The right.
resolution is.
Now we're discussing the
Pardon me, Mr. Chair,
amendment that was
Mr. Chair,
in front of us.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
did I miss something or did we just have a unanimous agreement on something?
By voice. So I guess if it's by voice, it's not official.
Do you need, I'm sorry to interrupt, do you need a voice vote on the amendment to this resolution?
We just.
We're voting on,
What was
just
yea
did.
or nay? Not a voice call.
They just
Yes.
did.
We
I'm just
did.
curious. Do you need to call names? Roll call?
No.
No?
This is just a procedural amendment.
now we are discussing the amendment itself.
The amendment to the
Oh, the
resolution.
Yeah, the amendment to the resolution.
We just
Is there any discussion?
Amendment as amended.
Yeah, the amendment as amended.
Madam Chair?
Thank you. So, and I appreciate Ms. Juby's addition to this. I'll do the back end of it. If everyone here and county board is included on this, and I propose to you a $300,000 budget minusing salaries, which are set, which include all your salaries, board salaries. So what happens if we're not able to do so?
What happens?
Let's wait and see the result first. Yeah, we'll cross that after.
I think you ought to start building the bridge.
Plan B.
Start building an
Bridge is-
arc.
The bridge is underway.
Kathy, do you have something you'd like to say?
I would like to make a recommendation. So today is Monday, the 12th. The regularly scheduled Finance Committee meeting is 2.5 weeks from today. So Wednesday, the 28th. That's what I have on my calendar. Per our budget calendar, that is the day where we're supposed to be presenting a draft budget. Do we want to have another special Finance Committee meeting next week? Or do we want, so, because if everybody submits all of their comments by this Friday, we would have all that information by this Friday.
We could do that, but let's vote on the resolution.
I think I think it'd be nice to have a clean proposed budget to recommend on the 28th.
Mhm.
Reacting to discussion from all the departments. Yes, I think it would be best.
so are we calling a special meeting?
Pardon?
Are we calling a special meeting?
Not yet.
It's being discussed.
We will after the resolution.
After this motion is approved, then we'll,
Okay.
this motion is voted on, excuse me. Any other discussion of the motion? We have roll call, please.
Juby,
Juby, aye.
Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Sanchez.
Sorry, Sanchez, yes.
Pepe,
Seppi, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Berman.
Berman, yes. So we need to discuss then a special meeting of this committee.
Still have item D.
Yeah.
Oh, we do?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The sales tax.
Fine. Do we have anybody to make a motion?
Just voted on amendments. We never actually voted that 70.
Postpone that. We have not. We're going to discuss that now. We have an motion for,
We do have a motion for it.
we do have a motion?
Yeah, we do have a motion in a second.
I think it
Was
was withdrawn, was it not?
No, it was
Okay,
B, C, and E.
yeah.
Do we have a motion to approve, B?
D as in dog.
B is in boy.
No, it just passed
We just passed that one.
as amended.
D,
Isn't dog.
the
D.
sales tax.
I'm sorry,
We said no.
D. My fault.
It's simply tabled.
No, I'm confused.
Yeah, we did.
All right, so we need a motion to approve.
I'd like to move that we potentially postpone this right now. We've been at this going on 3 hours. And, I don't know how long this discussion would take, but I think it might take a while. So that's my suggestion.
Is that a motion or a suggestion?
It's a motion.
Second,
Discussion.
I have a question.
Yes.
Are we going to be postponing this to the special meeting that we're having next week?
Good call.
Because I don't want to postpone it indefinitely. I
Mm.
mean, I'm willing to stay today if we have to, but I'd rather us start with fresh
I
feet.
agree.
Why don't you postpone it to the regular?
Let's postpone it then till our next finance meeting, whether it's a newly scheduled one as Kathy had recommended, which I think we will have one. We just don't know the date yet on that. But yeah, we'll postpone it until our next finance committee meeting.
Well, can we set it for August 19th?
We don't.
Yes, you could.
We have
That
to.
would imply that you're calling a meeting for that date.
Well, that would be I
We don't.
don't want it to wait until our next scheduled finance meeting. I would prefer us to
Agreed.
have our i's dotted and our t's crossed. No?
So you're proposing we do it the ninth, we have a special meeting the 19th then? Yep.
At 9 a.m. here.
All right, that'll be
Well-
up next, but,
I don't know why that's a bad day.
It isn't.
No, it's okay.
Everyone's fine about it.
Monday's pretty good.
all right.
Just make your motion to postpone
The
to.
motion is.
My motion is to postpone the resolution on the sales tax until our next finance meeting, which is scheduled for Monday, August 19th at 9 a.m. in this room.
Well, it's requested, it's not scheduled.
Well, the Shepro,
Next meeting,
just move to postpone it to
next meeting.
9 o'clock on the 19th.
August
And
19th.
that is essentially a motion then to have a meeting on that date.
Why not just make it a motion to postpone
There we go.
until the next Finance and Budget Committee meeting?
Okay,
That makes
so
it simple.
that's
Period.
Okay.
All right,
I'm sorry, I don't understand that. If we're making a motion to postpone it to the next one, it's the next scheduled one, so we're not having.
it's the next meeting.
The next
Next
meeting.
meeting.
I intentionally didn't say scheduled, so the next meeting, whenever that
So
is,
scheduled's not implied.
No.
The next meeting,
Period.
whenever that may be.
okay, I
Regular-
just
you
want to
could
make
say the
sure,
Next regular or scheduled Finance and Budget.
I just want to make sure we're not pushing this off until the next
Yeah.
regular
We're not going.
scheduled meeting.
So how about motion to postpone until the next Finance and Budget Committee meeting, comma, regular or scheduled, comma, whichever comes first.
Okay, so why aren't we just saying the 19th?
We don't have official approval for the 19th of a room and everything else.
Okay, I understand now. Thank you. I just needed to know why.
So that's my
That's motion,
motion.
discussion.
Is there a second?
We need a
Do you
second.
need a motion for the meeting to take place on the 19th?
Yeah,
Done. That's-
We have a motion. We had the motion. We just clarified what the motion.
who seconded?
We need a second.
I second.
All
We
right,
seconded.
Yeah.
Discussion. No discussion.
okay.
Roll call.
Juby,
Yeah,
Lewis. Yes. Sanchez. Sanchez. He's gone. Tepe,
Happy, yes.
Leonard.
Leonard, yes.
Berman, yes.
Is postponed.
It's
Motion would be in order for a special meeting on the 19th.
All right. We need a motion to call a special meeting on the 19th.
So moved.
That's for 9 a.m.
I'll second it.
You be? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, get rid of that. And that's old business? Committee chairman's comments? We finally accomplished something, I think. And I'm gonna sleep a lot better now that, now that we've gotten to this point. That's all I have to say.
I do
Executive
have,
session, pardon?
I do have one question because I want to know what we need to have for next Monday. So I will be taking action on the resolution that was passed today in the draft budget by taking 4 million from KDOT's RTA sales tax fund and showing a transfer to transfer fund. Well, actually, it won't even be a transfer. It's going to just be reducing their RTA sales tax revenue and increasing the general fund RTA sales tax. So I will be doing that. And then in terms of resolutions, so we'll need another resolution next Monday based on the results of what everybody submits by this Friday. So the resolution on Monday is probably going to be similar to today's resolution. And we can amend it at the meeting.
Well.
Thoughts? Just again, because we need to have some sort of a resolution to take, for this committee to take action on.
Question, Mr. Chairman?
Well,
Is it the intention of the committee or anybody that the special meeting will recommend a budget or that they will take action that will then go to the full regular finance meeting and that will be where the recommendation takes
latter.
place? The latter.
Okay, okay. And then, so there will be two resolutions then on the agenda for next Monday. The resolution regarding recommending the budget to the regularly scheduled finance committee meeting and the county sales, special county retailers occupation tax resolution. Is there any specific information that the finance committee would like related to the special county retailers occupation tax? What we've presented before, we presented the expected dollar amount at various rates. We've highlighted how much of our general fund budget is public safety. We've presented information on all the other counties across the state that have this. If there's anything specific, other specific information that you would like to know.
Madam Chair?
Oh, thank you. And I maybe forecast what Mr. Leonard's going to say. So I don't know, a line graph. So here's projected budget. And here is what a quarter of, remember, can go from 25% to 1.5%. And what does that look like in sales tax, not just for next 26, but if you could give us a 5-year projected growth so we know with that sales tax, if that is going to keep up with an estimate, obviously it's going to be a very rough estimate of what those budget costs are going to be for the county within that 5-year period. And if we have enough revenue coming in based simply on that sales tax levy. Because once we go out, it's going to stay.
Yeah, and if anybody else has any other.
The only other thing I would suggest is that within the presentation, there is a sense of urgency that we move this forward, because if we don't, we're going to have to cut more people. So I think the sense of urgency is really important in that presentation.
Okay, yeah, and if there's anybody has any other questions, if you could let me know. if
I have a-
that's Possible.
I have a comment, in the sale, with the, RTA sales tax and our deduction from our, building fund,
Capital fund, yeah.
capital fund. Those, the departments could come back with their presentations against that happen. So is that, is that included in what we're gonna present?
Let me make sure I understand what you're, so if departments,
Departments are gonna come back and make a recommendation. They're saying, I can take this much away, or I can't. And that would be the same, in what we're proposing for a reduction. But that would be the same thing. They would have that same comment to make on those other changes.
let me make sure I'm just understanding that. So, are you asking, is KDOT included on the list of departments that can come back and say that they can't have that revenue? They take those cuts?
I would think they'd have some comments to make about us
Right.
taking $6 million from RTA and,
That's so right.
yeah, so I would think they'd have some comment, either
Okay.
in favor of that or opposed, okay? And
We'll
I
make
would-
sure.
I would hope they would do that.
We will
And
make sure
same
they're
thing
included on the list
Same thing on.
and the capital projects. Yep.
project. Yes.
Mr. Berman, I have one
Madam Chair.
request. The county board budget was tentatively approved of by the executive committee who decides that budget. The executive committee is not going to meet again. So can we have some grace with this $75,000 request? Because I'm going to have to come back and the executive committee is going to have to take a vote on those proposed cuts. I'm on the list. Right there. I'm at the bottom of the list, right? I've got supervisor of assessment. And then I'm right there, $76,615,000. And I proposed about a $300,000 budget. And because I have ARPA salaries in there as well as county board salaries. And I cannot cut staff. Can't cut a recording secretary.
Yeah, let's address that during our meeting. That can be a discussion point that we can talk about. We can also talk about the finance department, which with our new proposed amendment would still have about an $85,000 cut. And that would mean they would have to cut one person. Those are all things we can discuss once we get the feedback from everyone. So let's wait until we get the feedback. Kathy presents what we're at, and then we discuss the other.
So you're asking for her to have the same timeline of August 16th as everyone else, and then we discuss it at the special meeting.
Yeah, you have to respond by Friday.
Okay.
As Kathy. Okay.
Hopefully we're able to have all the information we need to make intelligent decisions.
We can only.
Because we need all the facts. Oh,
The emphasis on intelligent.
yes. And what did you wanted to speak, did you?
No, I'm okay.
Okay. Executive session? No. German?
Yes.
Moves that we adjourn.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're out of here.
At 11.